Now,
technology.
some people are saying that in the future, humans won't be allowed to drive because their reflexes are too slow and they don't have 360-degree vision. Only a computer is smart enough to drive your car.
Well, and also the autonomous cars have the potential of talking to one another. So if there's an accident up ahead, the car can know about it long in advance. Or if there's a pothole in the road, the car can know about it and prepare for it. And so the sharing of information is another way to make sure that they're much more safe than human
Now, what about
drivers.
millions of people who drive for a living, all the truck drivers, because it would be easy to send driverless trucks out?
Yeah, huge area. Again, that's one of the areas of where automation is going to change the nature of a lot of jobs. Semi-drivers, apparently that's also not a very pleasant job. That, you know, a little bit of driving is fun, but hours and hours and hours on the road, people get tired, they get fatigued. There's a lot of issues of accidents coming from that.
Well, some people seem to like it because some people like to be away from everything and just on the road by themselves. So we're talking about millions of people who, what about companies like Uber, this taxi system where any private individual, without going through all the licensing requirements, becomes a taxi driver with his own car?
Yeah,
Now,
Uber is having a huge impact already, disintermediating the taxi companies. It's worth $50 billion at last count, and it's a phone app. And so that's kind of amazing. Right now, Uber makes their money by taking 20% of the commission, roughly. But they see the writing on the wall. If it's $50 billion for a phone app, lots of people are going to make this kind of phone app. And Google announced they're going to make their own kind of Uber-like thing. So then Uber announced, well, they're going to do their own self-driving cars. And they hired essentially the entire Carnegie Mellon robotics lab, and they set up an autonomous vehicle lab out in Pittsburgh. And so I think, and every car company now is also talking about doing autonomous cars. So we're going to see a lot of energy in that area.
I heard that Tesla's planning on having driverless cars in just a couple of years.
Yeah, they've said that by a software upgrade, they can get their cars to be 90% autonomous.
Now, what about people who love to drive? They love the thrill of controlling the car. Doesn't it? And that's the reason why people buy a Tesla, because it's so much fun to drive. But if you're just sitting as a passenger, where's the fun?
Yeah, that's a good question. There may be special parks where you get to, you know, race it yourself. Cars as we know them, if they do become autonomous, you may be able to work in there, you might be able to sleep in the car, the interiors may look very different than they do today.
Now, robots animated by artificial intelligence are very powerful things, but what happens when we give the robots the ability to fly as well, like drones? That's a whole other thing altogether. Intelligent flying machines. What are some, like right now we know you can go to a store like Fry's and buy a drone as a hobbyist for maybe $100 or so. But where's that going?
Well, I mean, that has, as with all of these things, it has very positive, amazing uses. Drones are being used to photograph things. A lot of agriculture, farmers are using drones to inspect their fields, and they can use way less herbicide because they can see right when something bad happens where they need to apply it. So huge, huge positive impact there, looking for forest fires, that kind of thing. People are also using them to spy on people. A lot of military uses. Military drones have become a huge, huge thing. Every country on the planet pretty much is developing their own drones.
In fact, I think we have a slide of a military drone. Could we see that slide, please? Okay, so there it is. So that aircraft at the top, that's the drone, and that missile underneath it is a missile just released by the drone, and it looks like there are some more missiles, ready to be launched. So this is changing the face of warfare in a significant way, because a human pilot takes up a certain amount of space, and you don't want to lose him. With a drone, you don't have to have an ejection system.
Yeah, exactly. Though I have heard that often U.S. is using drones quite a bit in the Middle East, and there are human pilots here in America who are guiding these drones. Apparently that's a pretty high-stress job, and so they're having some issues with the psychology of the people that fly those drones. That's one of the forces that may push them to become more autonomous.
Even though they're thousands of miles from the action.
Yeah, they still are seeing what they're doing, and they're making the decision when to blow something up, and that's a pretty stressful thing.
Because if they're going after somebody in Al-Qaeda or ISIS, they might say, well, we have them in our sights, but there's a bunch of civilians around them, so maybe we should hold our fire and try again at another time.
Exactly.
Or maybe not, as the case may be.
And so if you automate that function, now all of a sudden you're going to have a software program, an AI program, making that kind of decision. And that brings up all sorts of ethical issues. In Europe right now, there's a big movement to try and stop, killer robots is the phrase that people are using.
Well, drones are very powerful things. The problem is anybody can get them. If we can do it to somebody else, they can do it to us quickly and easily and cheaply. So almost anybody can buy a drone as a hobbyist, outfit it with a little payload, and just fly it through somebody's window who they don't like. And it's very hard to defend against that. A drone landed on the White House grounds a few months ago. The White House has no defense against that, at least it didn't a few months ago.
Yeah, that's a huge issue. And in fact, just a few days ago, a teenager built himself a drone with a handgun on it and was able to remotely fire this handgun. Took a video of it, posted it on YouTube, and petrified many people looking at that video.
And there was nothing illegal because it was on private property, wasn't threatening anybody.
Yeah, but I think that's a harbinger of what will be coming. And one of the responses to that is anti-drones. And so anti-drone warfare, I think, is something that we're really on the verge of.
Another interesting thing about drones is that they can come in many different sizes. You have very large drones that can carry missiles, drones that are the size of good-sized aircraft, and then you have drones that are the size of mosquitoes.
Yeah.
What use can you make of a drone the size of a mosquito?
Military is developing a number of very teeny drones, some of them quite expensive. That mosquito-sized drone is about $40,000. It's primarily for surveillance at the moment. If a branch of the military is going into a town or something, they'll send a fleet, a swarm of these little mosquito drones to go check it out. They get the video feedback and they know what's up ahead.
Is there any chance that these small drones will at some point become self-replicating? In other words, drones can make more drones like themselves, which would reduce the cost to next to nothing, and you could have huge swarms of these things and just send them out over a battlefield. They could smell the enemy's blood and deliver a fatal sting, and you don't even see it coming.
Yeah, so self-replication is a pretty difficult and challenging thing, so I wouldn't expect that in the near future. But 3D printed drones, that's already a thing. People are starting to make many of the key components. And so the cost of manufacturing large numbers of drones is going way down. And I know the US military is working on drone swarms, groups of drones that coordinate with one another as they fly around. There are also swarm boats. The Navy has developed a set of boats that surround, say, a pirate. If a pirate is coming toward a large ship, they can send out these swarm boats to kind of intercept them.
Now, what about normal, everyday, practical uses for people like us? I mean, aside from the fact that Amazon might be able to deliver your order via a drone, I mean, how will we make use of it?
Well, the delivery for orders, I think, is a bit of a PR stunt because it's pretty expensive energetically to fly something there. For something where the timing is really important, a few uses I've heard are bringing medicine to somebody who's sick. Let's say you've just been stung by a bee and you're allergic to a bee sting. Getting the medicine there really quickly is important. Or a defibrillator, or getting a lifesaver to somebody who's drowning out in the ocean. All of those are great uses.
Could drones also be outfitted with foldable arms and legs so it flies to a certain point and then walks the rest of the way?
Yeah, there's in fact, one of the hobbyist drone companies has a drone that has wheels on it, and it can fly and roll, and then there are also ones that can also be on the surface of water. So all kinds of things are going to be explored, I'm pretty sure.
If going into burning buildings, locating where people are?
Totally, yep.
So do you think this is really going to change the quality of life for the better? I mean, some people say too much technology might make humans obsolete. It might seem to devaluate human life in some way.
I think there's a risk of that. I think that these technologies are going to cause us to rethink what is the role of humanity. And I'm hopeful that it will cause us to focus more on the things that make us most human and allow the technology to handle a lot of the things which are kind of dehumanizing or more mechanical.
Because I know there are some people who are very devoted to machines and they want to replace certain of their own body parts with mechanical parts, so they're sort of partially robotized. I mean, is that a healthy trend, do you think?
Well, certainly somebody who's lost a limb having a replacement mechanical limb that works well, wonderful, fantastic.
In that case, there's a need for
There's a
it.
need, yeah. There are a certain part of the population that, you know, would like to be 10 feet tall, would like to experiment with themselves. And I think most of the population has a little bit of queasiness about that if it goes too far, particularly if you're, you know, editing the genome. That's sort of one of the hot things right now. And so I think that's an ethical, moral issue that humanity as a whole is really going to have to address. To what extent does modifying our, you know, innate natural human form, to what extent is that a good thing, and to what extent is it a bad
We're
thing?
tampering with something that maybe we're not the true owners of.
Yeah.